This week on Retrograde Radio, the full moon in Sagittarius makes an opposition to Uranus in Gemini for the first time in 84 years. That's the same amount of time it took Rose from Titanic to return to where she let Jack drown.
That's right. It's been 84 years. Welcome back to Retrograde Radio, baddies. Grab your cosmic umbrellas and your emotional lightning rods because we are looking at a somewhat volatile and tense week ahead as we lead up to the Sagittarius full moon. I'm Audrey, your resident cosmic meteorologist, and this is your high impact celestial weather report.
We've got some severe planetary fonts colliding to close out May, so let's look at the radar.
Mars in Taurus is locked in a tense square with Pluto in Aquarius. The forecast: expect heavy atmospheric pressure and structural volatility. This isn't a light drizzle, it's an intense and volatile energy front. We're looking at severe turbulence from individuals struggling with control issues, violent tendencies. Bullying much? This aspect may affect early degree fixed placements the most, since it's occurring at 5 degrees Taurus and 5 degrees Aquarius.
This could also show up on the political level with insecure bullying leaders who make their insecurities our problem. If you feel the ground shaking or tempers flaring around you, do not engage the storm. Seriously, just don't. Don't be a hero. Seek emotional shelter and steer clear of power struggles.
Do not engage. DNE. Next up, we've got a cold front, Venus square Saturn on May 28th. Venus in sensitive Cancer is running straight into a wall built by fallen Saturn in Aries.
Sounds like a sudden drop in emotional temperature.
Exactly. Venus in Cancer wants comfort and security, and Saturn is demanding a freeze frame. This transit is bringing a massive wave of brutal honesty to our connections. It's forcing us to pull out the magnifying glass, confront messy relationship dynamics, and reassess our deepest values and attachments. This other cosmic clash is occurring at 14 degrees and 44 minutes.
Well, what's the best way to prepare for this cold front? The clouds are parting to show you exactly what is and isn't working. Don't fear the chill, lean into it and use it to see clearly.
And finally, that's great advice. Thank you so much. And finally, we are ending May with a rare double header. Yes, our second full moon of the month. We started with a full moon, we're ending with a full moon, lighting up the sky, an adventurous, truth-seeking Sagittarius. With Uranus and Gemini joining the party in an opposition, this lunation will be the main story, the main event of this episode. So stay tuned.
Thanks to our resident cosmic storm chaser for that lookout. Now for the news,
Boop,
which is
boop.
by two completely different people that look and sound similar.
We are not the weather people and the news
Nope.
people. We're different. Anyway, Google is turning search into AI. Tulsi Gabbard is leaving national intelligence. Fox News is denying it interviewed a man in a human mask. France banned Ben Gvir, and there was another shooting near the White House. And JD Vance canceled weekend plans to rush back to DC.
Mercury and Gemini said, let's make information unstable. Sun conjunct Uranus said, make it weirder. Mars and Taurus said, now do it with anger. And Pluto retrograde in Aquarius came in. Now reveal which institutions were actually just three raccoons in a trench coat.
Yeah. Oh, man. It was loaded. Any advice from the stars?
Yeah, so, screenshot everything, hydrate, adapt a new search engine and browser divorced from Google, and never trust a man whose neck has a loading screen. Still can't figure out why Vance was in such a hurry to get back to DC. This weekend saw zero escalation in the ongoing conflicts. Well, until 2 hours ago. Uh,
That's actually sarcastic because, yeah, we've got drone strikes in the Strait of Hormuz. So stay tuned on how that pans out. Right on time for a Mars
it was
square.
defensive.
Yeah, right.
No
Defense.
one can say what it was in defense of, but it's been described as being defensive.
Right. As is this entire illegal war. Um, So Ashley's was having a huge Memorial Day sale on furniture. That feels equally as relevant and exciting.
Oh, right, JD Vance, yeah, couches.
We love our couches on this show.
To whoever from the CIA watches these episodes, no, we will not ever let him live that down. Never. There's dozens of us online, in fact.
So, the National Trust for Historic Preservation released its 2026 list of America's most endangered historic places, focusing this year on sites tied to equality movements, including Stonewall, Seneca Falls, and Tule Lake.
That, is very Jupiter in Cancer, and that Pluto retrograde Aquarius energy, the home, ancestors, collective memory, and of course, the sites most at risk are the ones that remind America it did not become free by being polite to property owners.
Right, property owners. As if we can own that property. Each site
It's
will receive
apparently theft.
each site will receive a $25,000 grant.
That's lovely, but also America giving Stonewall $25,000 while threatening queer history is very, "Sorry I hit your car, here's a Panera gift card."
Yeah, and it's just specifically Panera, where we probably would drink that weird green tea that, like, gave people heart attacks.
Or Hobby Lobby. Maybe they just
Right,
really, like,
right.
yeah,
You go to
like, "Here you
Hobby
go to
Lobby
Hobby Lobby."
with a weird
Yeah.
green tea that'll kill you, but you'll at
This
least
is not a promotion for Hobby Lobby, by the way, fuck them.
absolutely
Uh,
not. This is sarcasm. Trump signed an executive order requiring banks to take a closer look at their customers' citizenship status.
Pluto retrograde in Aquarius again, coming in here. Who controls the systems? And the answer appears to be a bank teller named Brenda, who now has to ask if your checking account has papers. This is also Saturn and Neptune in Aries because nothing says healthy identity formation like turning Wells Fargo into ICE with overdraft fees.
And it's also right on time for the, full moon in Sagittarius. Sagittarius
Yep.
dealing with, foreign things and immigration status, and we will, at some point, also talk about the overlaps between Cancer transits in general with ICE stuff
Mhm.
and immigration. So immigration enforcement through banking does sound just a smidge dystopian, just a smidge.
A little bit, maybe idiocracy, you know, like paying alimony at a Carl's Jr., but it's also giving Venmo asking for your birth certificate before letting you split mozzarella sticks. Um, it's just it's ridiculous, and a lot of it, I think, is it's show, it's spectacle. A lot of this stuff getting passed doesn't really get enforced,
Mhm.
and that's the mercurial energy that we have going
Right.
on right now.
Right. Uranus just lighting up someone's Gemini placements. The
Mhm.
subpoena has also created a messy online response with some liberals cheering the investigation because they dislike Hassan personally.
Yeah, so Twitch streamer words are hard, speaking of Mercury. Hassan Piker was recently subpoenaed over a relief mission to Cuba.
Mm,
And this is where the masks come off because a lot of people's civil liberties, politics are apparently just I support free speech, but not for him because other people I follow say he's an asshole.
right. And, it's interesting. I just want to say that there's also, he's been speaking with, there's been a lot of talk about Elon Musk and Israel, and there's a lot there. Hassan
Yep,
Piker.
he was
Yep.
I can't remember her name, but he was
Yeah.
talking to, the one ex that is, says she
Yeah.
has proof allegedly of, texts that show, they were reading the text in one of the
Yeah.
streams that, where he was admitting to rigging,
Fraud.
the
Yeah.
election. Yeah.
Which is something else we'll dig into at some point. We'll probably dig into election fraud stuff at some point. So the principles have conditions.
Yeah, that's the way it's always been. Some liberals saw The government in this instant using sanctioned powers against a leftist media figure and went, finally, fascism I can enjoy. It's very like rainbow flag on strike drone, ACLU, but only for people who have never annoyed me on Twitter. Fascism is fascism, people. We can disagree with one another. We're always going to. But when the justice system is being used to silence your enemies, that should never be celebrated.
Here,
And
here.
there's no joke there. There's no punchline. That's just
Yeah,
don't do
that's
that.
don't do that. Don't celebrate fascism. Some
No.
sad news from the White House this week. There was yet another shooting near the grounds. Yeah. And
Yeah, and timing around 8:15 on Saturday, 15 minutes into Don Jr.'s wedding. The wedding Trump skipped.
and the only thing that's more memorable than that actual shooting, because I think our collective eyes rolled back into our head because we sort of saw through it, is the incredible reporter and the memes that have come forward from that moment. So shooting, but the memes, let me tell
Yeah.
you. The shooting memes is really where it's at. This is where
I
this is
oh,
this is the
100%.
this is the desensitized reality we're living in. Um, but yeah, so he still missed the wedding. He missed the wedding, but he still got attention. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, right? Like, somehow he was not at the wedding and still managed to catch the bouquet, the cameras, and global attention. Um, Not only did he snub his son, he somehow managed to make the entire night about himself from another country. Now, are we saying he faked another assassination attempt to steal the media cycle from Don Jr.?
Maybe. I mean, even Logan Roy went to his kid's wedding.
For the Succession fans out there, Logan Roy, whose parenting style was hostile takeover, he showed up for Connor, and Connor had the emotional density of a fucking gourd. Trump couldn't show up for Don Jr., a man whose entire personality is dad, look, I'm yelling too.
It's good. Speaking of media attention and ratings, recently Stephen Colbert, his run on The Late Show has ended after 11 years, leaving a major void in political satire. And as astrologers, we respect a void. Void moons, void houses, void of course, despair spirals. I think I've gotten to know those pretty well in recent years. We
Oh, yeah.
cast into the voids, we interpret voids, we stare into voids, and we ask if Mercury has always been this rude.
It's the hard hitting questions here. CBS claims the decision was economic, right? And sure, I mean, my emotional spending is economic. And it has absolutely nothing to do with political pressure, corporate cowardice, or the fact that satire becomes very inconvenient when the rich start sweating through their human skin masks. But at least now there's a void, and darlings, we are nothing if not professionally void adjacent.
Yes,
Adjacent.
very void adjacent. Adjacent. Both of us can't
I
say that.
started to think, no,
We're
we're void
adjacent.
adjacent.
We are
We're in the
void
basement
adjacent.
adjacent to
We
them,
lean
so it's
into the
adjacent.
void. We don't only we not only scream into the void, we jump headfirst into the void. And what fills this void? I want to know.
Plus, apparently, 2 microphones, knowledge, and the kind of legal department that is just me whispering "allegedly" into the night sky. And those are the headlines for this week.
Now for the main story. All right, all right. We're gonna dig in. It's a potent week as we've already established with the forecast. There's some tensions and clashes and things leading up to the full moon in Sagittarius. And as we established, this is not a ordinary full moon in Sagittarius because we have Uranus coming to the party for the first time in 84 years. Uh
Mhm.
Insert the Titanic meme. Um, And so, one of the things that we really wanted to dig into today in relation to this Uranian infused lunation is how this shows up for America. America, fuck yeah. All right, for any millennials who catches that reference, and you may not, you don't have to be a
Matt
millennial.
Damon.
As many of you know, countries and events as well as people have charts. All right. This is a major foundation to mundane astrology. And for those that don't know, I'm just going to quickly say it. Mundane astrology is big picture astrology. It's kind of the original purpose of what astrology was used for. It's political astrology, it's world events, it's looking at governments, it's looking at nation states, cities, events,
Mhm.
wars, economies. And this is something that we obviously lean into over here on Retrograde Radio.
Right,
And
because a lot of civilizations, even before the whole sky was mapped, the sun and moon were so important to, you know, um, signs of, like I mean, planting, obviously seasons, where the full moon was, what type of full moon it was indicative of such vital really the only vital things to survival then, right? And then, like, with the Egyptians, we had, like, the sun being very important to, like, rulers and stuff like that, but, so it's always been used, um, in this sense,
yeah,
even though we relate to it more natally, I think a lot of the times.
well, it's interesting. I mean, this is something that Richard Tarnas gets into a little bit in Cosmos and Psyche and talking about the development of the Western world and the perception of the world and the self and
Mm,
how things moved into more of a self place, a
yeah,
self-centered place, a self-aware place in terms of the way that we orient ourselves into the world. But you know, astrologers were originally whispering into the ears of kings and rulers
right,
and what we would consider political figures now. And so, in many ways, mundane astrology is sort of the original astrology. It's just that you know starting in the 20th century, kind of in the 60s, astrology and horoscope started to get printed in publications like Cosmopolitan and women's
yep,
magazines. And this is why we started to associate it in pop culture with women, even though historically men have still been the dominant figures in this space. So there's some interesting misconceptions, and these are some of the deep cut perspectives that we like to get into on this show.
yeah,
And before we dig into what this full moon can mean for the US and maybe some foreign entities as well, not only because it's a Sagittarius full moon, but we're going to be talking about the other houses that are lit up by this transit and how that pertains to foreign parties. But one of the reasons that we're, you know, digging in to that is, you know, kind of getting back to the traditional roots of what astrology really was and understanding that part of it and that lore. And so the chart that we will be using is the Sibley chart. And I'm going to kind of get into the background of what that is just briefly and where that comes from. And by the way, I we are also using whole sign houses for this because that's how we roll on retrograde radio. We are whole
yeah,
sign hosts. Okay. Um so like what is this the Sibley chart? So when it comes to the chart for the US, it's kind of shrouded in mystery. Think about it. I mean, like the men who signed the Declaration of Independence were operating in sort of like nervous, high stakes secrecy. They knew damn well that this endeavor, if it went sideways, they'd end up on the king's gallows. So nobody sat down to log the exact time the first or last signature hit the parchment. They didn't exactly leave an astrological paper trail per se. But because of that, we are left to do our own historical detective work, aka engaging in what we call chart rectification. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with that process, and you can do chart rectification can is something that you can also do natally, and there are it's quite advanced. I think if you get to that point of being able to be really, really excellent at chart rectification. I think, at that point, you're a pretty excellent astrologer. And so that's what was done on the level of the United States chart. And in astrology, obviously, accuracy is everything. Without a precise birth time, you can't accurately predict like all the houses and how exactly all the cosmic triggers are going to work together. And so one of the famous blueprints that we ultimately defer to is this Sibley chart, which was named after Ebenezer Sibley. He was an 18th century English astrologer living in London. He published this chart based on information that the official documents were signed in Philadelphia after the Declaration was adopted. And so later on, there was someone who came in and further rectified, and I believe his name was Dane Rudyard. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, and he further recalibrated the gears and adjusted the cosmic clock, so to speak. And I think we end up with 5:10 p.m. But I think also, by the way, he has maybe a 5:14 p.m. But anyway, I think 5:10 p.m. is kind of while there has been rigorous debate over this, because we know that astrologers love a debate. We love to fight over some things like this. While there has been a lot of debate and other charts exist, there is a chart with a Gemini rising, which I myself have not dug into, and that's quite interesting to think about. But
Mhm.
even though there are other charts that exist, the Sibley chart does kind of remain the industry standard. And astrologers know that this chart kind of like looking back throughout historical trends and historical events, transits used against the Sibley chart to like look back retrospectively and use it like to rectify in that way, it has checked out, such as like the Saturn Pluto opposition in 2001, which was found to align with really obviously traumatic nation altering events. Wonder what that could be. And so, AKA 9/11. So, it's one
Oh,
of those
thank you. I
things.
was wondering.
I got you.
You
Um,
did. I was like, "Oh, you're not gonna say?" Oh, whew.
so essentially, like it was sort of accepted, and then it's been like fact checked, and we look back and we see
Yeah.
that it does kind of check out. Um, and like that's just kind of like a bit of a brief breakdown and like derivation and like origin story of why we use what we call the Sibley chart. Um, and so I don't know, do you wanna add anything to that before I dig into the US's?
No, I think it is interesting, and we could go on a whole rabbit hole down this, so I just wanted to call it out that, like, a Gemini rising, if you think of context of, like, the Uranus return and, Uranus and Gemini for the Civil War, I mean, like, a disruption of the self kind of that does kind of fit. Obviously, they've looked at so many different things, but, like, I just when you said that, it made me think, like, yeah, for Civil War, that actually makes a lot of sense for
Right.
Uranus there, from that perspective. But there was also the, Neptune and Aries, which I think really, like, that and the Uranus and Gemini in the 7th house working together,
Yeah,
um, like, it still obviously applies to the Civil War, but I just thought that was interesting.
which we will also be digging into in June sometime. Is that June? We have that on the slate for June, yeah. Um,
Yeah, it'll be kind of a two-parter,
Mhm.
is the Mars-Uranus conjunction and then, like, the Neptune Aries. Those are just such big topics to talk about, like, on their own.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I mean, I it does kind of make me like I have a degree in the social sciences. I studied international relations and global economics, and it was looking at a lot of data over time, and it was like a lot of
Mhm.
comparative analysis. So I'm not gonna lie, like there's a nerd inside of me that's like, ooh, what if I could like what if we look at the Gemini rising one and the Sagittarius rising one and we cross compare and do like a study and look at historical transits over time. Don't know if I have the bandwidth and the time to do that, but if somebody does, like that would be really interesting and fascinating. So maybe bookmark
Jesus,
that.
okay, I'll do it. Fast. We're collaborators. But no,
Mm,
my brain's already like, "Nope, I'm too, fascinated by this now. I'm going down a rabbit hole
no,
at some point."
I know. So,
Yeah.
expect us to talk about this again at some point because probably
Yep.
we'll be doing some more research. This is what we do. Okay. So, but for the purpose of our analysis and interpretation for this full moon, we will be using the Sibley chart, which is Sagittarius rising. And so the US has 12 degrees Sagittarius rising. And that sets up the houses. Again, whole sign, we have Sagittarius first house. And so and the US has natally has Mars and Uranus and Gemini in the seventh house, right? This is we're experiencing a Uranus return. And it's really interesting because it's a Uranus return for Trump as well. And
Oh, right.
it's right,
Um, and Israel. Israel was formed, during the
exactly.
Gemini Uranus in the 40s, the late 40s, yeah.
Yeah, so there are these like Uranus and Gemini themes that are coming up a lot, which is why Uranus coming to the party of this full moon. It to me, it I don't know about you, but to me this feels like a sort of ceremonial kickoff of more to come during this transit because in a way, when Uranus
Mhm.
moved into Gemini recently, and we're not talking about the preview of last year, but when it really moved, it ingressed in, it was escorted in by Venus, right? And we've talked about this a little bit and how it gave it a little bit of a Venusian support and a tone to
Mhm.
it. It almost set like the tone of this Uranus era is going to
Yeah.
be Venusian, is going to have Venusian qualities to it. And
But because Venus was, in such a good place being in Taurus where Uranus was at too, so she was, like,
right.
just really set up to, like, kind of be this, like, comforting presence to
And we've
yeah.
been working with by the way, like, let's talk a little bit about there most of you are going to know how Uranus showed up in Taurus for you, but for those that don't know, I know I've got a lot of people on threads, and shout out to some people from some special group chats who I know love to tune in, who are a fan of the show, that they're kind of using this podcast to dive in deeper to astrology. So we want to meet the people who are the astrologers as well as the people who are learning. So just want to quickly
Yeah.
talk about, in order to really understand Uranus in Gemini, we have to kind of look back a little bit as well and see what Uranus in Taurus was for many of us. And so that lasted from 2018. Was it I think it went in May 2018, and then obviously it just recently left. Um
Mhm.
and so that was, and during that transit we saw a lot of things, a lot of Taurus themed things come to the forefront. The way that
Yep.
we labor and the way that we earn money change. That's when we started
Cryptocurrency.
working, obviously, the currency, cryptocurrency, and just currency in general. I think we saw like Apple
Yeah.
paying more digital, the tapping and all that take
Yep.
off as well.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
and even, like, with COVID, like, the way it impacted supply chains,
mhm.
and the impact on how people yeah.
Yeah, like how people work, because like labor is also
Yeah.
associated
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
Taurus. So people started working from home, which is very Taurus, like very like let's work from home and let's be comfortable at home, and like creature comforts. And I mean, we saw like luxury influencers take off during this time. Luxury is very Venusian, very Taurus
Yes.
themed. We saw the homestead movement take off, gardening, growing your
Yep.
own. That's super Taurus.
On a
Because Taurus
lot of, like,
are.
hobbies I saw people got into, like, bird watching, like,
I was
super
one of
heavily
those people.
because they grew bird
I was
I
one of those
wasn't, but I
bird watchers.
gardening. I was gardening, but, like,
You were
like, so
gardening, I was a bird watcher.
yeah,
I know,
yeah,
it's like what midlife crisis hobby
and
did you get
even,
into
like,
as a millennial?
because of the way shopping changed, there were a lot more I at least saw anecdotally a lot more, like, farmers markets being
Yeah.
utilized. And I remember thinking like, "Oh, wow, like, maybe this is actually having a positive impact."
Sure.
right?
I
Like
mean,
it was like,
that's the thing that Uranus gets a bad rep, but it
yeah,
revolutionizes what
yep,
it's working with, and sometimes that's good. And I mean,
it is.
I'm very Uranian and very out of bounds, so I'm always going to be like, let's shake it up.
Well, and
But I
then
mean,
because you had COVID that spawned from it was the what, the Saturn Pluto square
I think it was
that was like
oh, God, I should
maybe,
know.
yeah, yeah. See, this
I
is
love
where I say this is you, not me. I can't remember all these, but like anyway, there's that Saturnian energy, and I feel that like now Saturn's in Aries, and there's that different energy with it, right? Um, for this right now, that it was a bit of a lesson, for
it
lack
was.
of a better word, where there was this like, I like to say Saturn teaches so Jupiter can expand. And like there was that disruption, right? Like Uranus came in and Kool-Aid manned into the scene. And Saturn was like, let's like look at this Capricornian way. Where are the structures, where are the containers, where are the boundaries, what's working, what's not working. Um, and we kind
Yeah.
of adapted. And then we just went back to the old ways again. And I think we're feeling that
Well,
like y
it's interesting. So I do know, I just had a moment, honestly. I'm like, I know it was
mhm.
Pluto conjunction, but it was like in that moment I doubted it. I'm like, let me make sure I'm right. I wanted to say Saturn Pluto conjunction. It definitely was.
It was, right?
Because
Yeah,
it, of
okay.
course, because it also pertains to something else we'll talk about later, which a lot of people are talking about, which is Barbeau's basket, Andre
Yeah.
Barbeau, because
Marbo, yeah.
yeah, he predicted that. I mean, he predicted a lot of things, and he's kind of the reason, if you want to look into him, if you don't know about him, he is this famous French astrologer, and he's kind of one of the reasons that we treat the outer modern planets as generational planets. And
Mhm.
um, you know, I think one of the key things, and we won't go deep off the, because we're getting a little distracted here, but we won't go off the deep end. I love it. I love our little side. These are side quests. We are deep cut
Yeah.
side toes. But one of his one of his things with Barbeau's basket is that he kind of predicted COVID on some level, right? And the Saturn Pluto
Mhm.
conjunction having that impact that it had. But apparently, with the basket, there is a shroud of hope. There's a shred of hope because it's going to be a sextile. Because then now we're going to have Pluto and Saturn in a sextile. And that's one of the key ingredients of the basket formation. And we'll talk
Yeah. Well,
more about later. But
and
there,
something he's
that's like revisiting things that went wrong or
yes.
were traumatic in a different light and actually
Yeah.
bringing some resolution.
His focus too was, predominantly on the shape. Like
Of
the
course.
signs that they're in is going to give the energy to what is happening, and it's that air and fire this July with that basket. 17th, July 17th,
I believe
I
so.
think.
So
Yeah.
we're bookmarking
Because
that.
there was a
We'll
similar outer
yeah,
planet formation, where it was, they were kind of scattered. So it was this scattered energy, and it caused this really kind of like it was, difficult, like a square in opposition. Not because they were making those aspects, but it was a lot. There's tension, right? Whereas with
yeah,
this basket, it's this kind of like comforting formation that it's making, like it is catching us from the fall almost of,
there's a flow of
what
energy
we the pressure we've been under, the tension we've been under. There
for
is some
sure.
relief.
Yeah, which is interesting. Interesting that there's gonna be relief after such a intense, Mars-Uranus conjunction happening on the 4th,
Right,
which we will talk
right.
about, and
Yeah.
everybody's kinda got their eyes on that astrology-wise. So, alright, so, to kinda bring it back to, I guess, the US's chart in this full moon, so, the Sagittarius first house, even though, so the thing about mundane astrology is that the houses do work a little differently than they do in natal astrology. However, you can understand with the first house that there's some it's pretty overlapped,
Yeah.
and so um it basically, I see this, and I think I was talking about this being like sort of a ceremonial kickoff it basically, to me, triggers in this, like, loud full moon way, this identity crisis that I believe the United States will be going through during this Uranus and Gemini era. I believe until 2033, we are
Yep.
going to be in the middle of a identity crisis because Sagittarius rising, we have Uranus natally and Mars natally in the 7th house. And so that access, that first and seventh house access, is getting majorly activated over the next several years. And
Right. And on this full moon, the moon will be conjunct the United States ascendant.
right. Yep. Yes. And it's the, it's powerful, and it's also it's symbolic that Trump was born on a full moon eclipse, a lunar eclipse. He has a sun in Gemini and he has moon in Sagittarius. So this is further getting amplified that
Mm.
the head of the United States right now, unfortunately, um is this person who has this access also majorly, that it's a powerful thing to be born on an eclipse. And we're also, while we're talking about Trump being born on an eclipse, we are going to say one side note that we decided we were going to say, and we're going to say it once, and this is it. But for everybody that keeps wondering and talking about the event,
Oh, that's
the big beautiful
oh my
obituary,
God.
we won't really be doing that on this show in general. We don't really like to give our energy to that. But I will say this one time. He was born on an eclipse. If he's going to go out at any predictive place, I don't like to predict these things, and I don't like to give my energy to this. I think I would like to give my energy. If we're gonna work on manifesting something, I'd like to see justice. I'd like to see a conviction. But anyway, um, if he's going to go out, it's most likely going to be an eclipse, and especially one that especially that Aquarius Leo axis, because he's a Leo rising. So,
Right.
you know, anyway, that's all we're going to say about that for now. We're not going to dig into too deeply into that lane and into that energy, but let it be known publicly and
Look,
let it be
kids,
documented.
nothing changes if he dies. We're still in a world of shit, and I need you to realize that. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, it doesn't that doesn't magically solve all of our problems overnight, but I'm sure it would. I know, and that isn't to delegitimize the are so over this person, and they've taken away like some of our best years. It's been like 10 years of
Yeah,
this person heavily
yeah.
in the news cycles. We are all over it. That isn't to say that we aren't equally as over it as you are. It's just anyway. But for everyone who keeps thinking, "Oh, is this gonna be it? Is this gonna be it?" A lot of people were thinking when Uranus went into Gemini. I'm like, "No."
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
this is to me, it is just so clear that he is an eclipse baby, that an eclipse is going to play a role. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, and just like with an eclipse playing a role in kicking off like where we're at now with the February 28th leading up to that and the bombing of Iran, and Khomeini being killed, who was also being born on an eclipse. It just seems like, and then Netanyahu also, who is a Sagittarius rising. So like
We're gonna
the
get into.
crossover,
Yeah,
yeah, the crossover is pretty crazy. But like, yeah,
exactly.
as far as signatures go, I agree. Like if it, I've said to myself, if it will happen like in a big moment, it will be then. If he's going to lose power at all, that is the moment I look at. It may not even be death, but it might be because of it being in the South node, in Leo, so it's releasing stuff, getting rid of stuff
Yeah.
in that theme. I could getting rid of him. Yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah, when
Maybe,
Jupiter moves
but
into Leo and the South Node moves into Leo over his first house, that will be significant as well. I know that
yep,
Chani has gone on record recently and saying that she thinks something is going to be significant in August, that he's going to be maybe brought to his knees in some capacity. We shall see.
yep.
But regardless, I don't think this is. I personally don't feel like this is going to be a quiet full moon for him. for our country or for him. This just
Mhm.
feels too symbolic and too on the nose for that. And so, it's again kind of getting back to the mundane astrology and what the first house is. It ties into our collective consciousness, our collective physical vitality, the collective identity, which we've talked about, and just the literal populace of the country, particularly because it's a moon transit. This is a full moon over the first house, and the moon itself can represent the people.
Right.
So it's a direct spotlight on who we are as a collective. Um, and so to really look at how that pressure is building, I think we have to follow, just like I would do, or many of you would do when you're breaking down a natal chart, you follow the chain of energy and you look at the
Mhm.
chart ruler and you go to that house where the chart ruler is. So right away, okay, what is Sagittarius ruled by? It's ruled by Jupiter. Where does the US have Jupiter? Well, we've actually been having a Jupiter return. We have Jupiter natally at 5 degrees Cancer
Yep.
in the eighth house.
Yep.
Okay. And so it's important to note that right away, the eighth house is a dominant house for the US Sibley chart. We are a Cancer stellium, right? Our birthday is July 4th, or we're Cancer Nation. We have many Cancer placements in
We
the eighth
certainly are a
house.
Cancer.
Yes, and we could talk about that all day long. But we've got Sun, we've got Jupiter, we've got Venus and Mercury. And consequently, if you're really, diving in deep, we've got Vertex and a lot of fortune there too.
I mean,
And I
yeah, I
find
think yeah, it may not count as a stellium, but that's a lot of energy there, though, I think
no,
taking
it's a
everything into
stellium, even
context,
with the
yeah.
planets. You've
Oh,
got
sorry, I meant, like, the vertex and,
oh yeah,
lo
yeah,
they don't count towards it,
right.
technically, but yeah,
But even
I think
without
they
those,
add
you've got four. So you've
4.
got
Yeah,
Mercury, Sun, Jupiter,
so
and Venus.
even, like, that Venus-Jupiter conjunction is relevant in that Venus is natally in the US's
Of
8th
course.
house as
And
well,
that will
okay.
also, and which we're gonna be talking about as well, and it's
Yeah.
very to benefics, but it's also going to feel I feel like whatever is dredged up in this full moon, I feel like can continue to play out, throughout Gemini and Cancer season, right? Because we just have, like,
Mm,
very Gemini and Cancer themes heavily dominated in the US chart, which is interesting because, like, I mean, you look at Trump, he's got Cancer and Gemini placements. I
yeah.
myself have these placements. I've got Mercury and Venus in Cancer, and I've got heavy Gemini placements. I don't have obviously Uranus and Mars, but I do think that I think that people who have these dominant placements actually do like I do think historically sometimes they get shot into the American public eye or they become like America's sweethearts because there's something that's very like the focus gets put on them a little bit. And I think about like Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Harrison Ford, and I think about Lana Del Rey, and I don't know, there's just a lot of Nicole Kidman. There's a lot of like Gemini Cancer
Mm,
stuff that really ends up being sort of prominent. And when we look at Cancer, a Cancer stellium in the eighth house, like it's interesting. Like, what does that show up as like as an identity? For the US. I mean, Cancer is a sensual, soft, nurturing, home-loving sign. I mean, there's that part of the US that also Cancer like doesn't want to change. And so I
yeah.
think there's that part of the US that's just so reticent to change in a weird way, as
Yeah, well, you and I
optimistic
talked about
as
this,
it
it's
is.
the nostalgia.
Yes, and we love nostalgia, like, we're always
Yeah,
looking back, it was always better then, even though we
yep.
know the true history of this country. And so, anyway, so that 8th house even is getting accentuated in this transit as well because we've got Venus and Jupiter there, and we've got it's a Jupiter return, and Jupiter loves to expand whatever it touches, and Jupiter is also aspecting, we have these Cancer placements. We've got this Venus Saturn square happening leading up to this lunation as well, as we discussed already. So we've got this, and I think a lot of people that I talk to, myself included, have really been feeling all the feels, all the Cancer feels. Like it's been a lot, like it's just been really cancery and heavy. And I think it's like emotionally charged. And we've got this like Mars Pluto square leading up to it. So even though it's happening in Sagittarius, which is like, some of the stereotypes that we would typically associate with Sagittarius being like adventurous and truth seeking and fun, even though this is happening on that fire and
Yeah,
air access, it's still got this backdrop of like high emotions to it, especially in the context of how we're going to be experiencing it on the collective level with the United States.
absolutely. And then you factor in the Saturn um that is aspecting this as well from the fifth house.
Yeah, and at some point we're going to be talking about a Saturn opposition. Um
Yep.
that'll be happening for the US because we have Saturn natally in Libra in the US's chart in the 11th house. So I kind of want to go back to so we've kind of talked about like how a Cancer 8th house stellium shows up for the United States and like our identity, but how the 8th house works with mundane astrology, I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. Um so the 8th house, it rules like systemic, heavy duty matters, right? Like this is intense. This can deal with like public mortality rates, national debt, right? Because the 8th house does deal with debt. And when you get into it
Mm.
on the collective level, we're looking at like national debt and just sort of like our intricate financial relationships with foreign nations. Because so the second house in natal astrology is like your money, your labor, right? And the 8th house is like other people's money and like shared resources. And that's often like expressed as, the shared resources you have with your spouse or something, or your family or inheritance. But on the national level, we look to our shared resources in the exchange of money or the money coming in that's related to other nations. And so again, to me, this is sort of like a receptive energy, like chain of energy that's happening because it's happening in Sagittarius, which is something that we associate with foreign entities. And I've been reading, I keep up with, again, I'm a nerd. I have a degree in economics, so I love to keep up with like global economy news. And I think I sent you something the other day about and Trump was recently in China, and there's been lots of talks,
Yes. Yeah.
and there's been a big focus on the US's economy in the context of China's economy, and so I wanted to kind of pull that up and look at that. Um, and so China, alongside Japan, I think it's just after Japan. So a lot of people think that China's the number one um, holder of the US debt, but I think it's actually second to Japan. The UK, as well as some other countries, hold a lot of the US debt, but China is currently sitting on roughly $650 billion in US treasuries. And China also runs a historic trade surplus with us, right? Like
Right.
this is something we know. And that entire economic pipeline has been deeply impacted due to this ongoing war in Iran and the resulting spikes in oil prices. And so, with the moon illuminating America's first house of public identity and the chart ruler activating that eighth house of foreign debt and global crisis, I think the optics here are shifting. And I think the public mood and the way that we perceive those things are going to be shifting. I think I think we've been slow to embrace it because, again, the Cancer stellium, I think we are slowly understanding. I think the writing's been on the wall for a lot of us for a long time
Right.
that the economic prowess of this country is diminishing and has been for some time. And you talked about this on your Trash Fire Tarot episode today, but that the illusion of the stock market being good and
Oh,
like
yeah.
and I think there's a little bit of this happening. I
Yeah,
think
that
this
Neptune and Aries, like, that illusion is starting to be burned, right? It's put up against that Martian fire that's kinda dissolving it, because 'cause we're seeing it manipulated in real time, and that's why I thought, like, going into this weekend, it was, it was that will they, won't they energy back and forth with Iran and the US to the point where I'm, like, almost thinking the Iranian government is just in on this to some degree because like they're making money off of it, right? Like, and anyone making money during war, I don't trust. Just full
Well,
stop.
this is always I mean, unfortunately, this was one of the first things I ever learned in my international relation courses and economic courses was, like this was, like, lesson number 1, like, war is profitable. And you once you
Yeah,
get
well,
that
sure.
no, but once you understand that that is what most people that are in positions of power, they know that, they embrace it, and they run with it. And so once we know
Yep.
that, once we get that firmly in our bones that war is profitable, period, and it has been for a really long time, and it's sick, I'm not saying it's right, it definitely isn't, it's not ethical, it's not moral, but war is profitable, and this is a big part of the US's history. And if we look at that, the negative side of expansionism and the military
Yep.
industrial complex and multinational corporations and expanding and that global expansion, which is totally speaks to the Sagittarius first house.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, so and but I think what I think is happening though is I feel like most Americans have been blind to this for a very long time. Red, blue, conservative, progressive, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. I feel like for most of, you know, I feel like for a lot of people, this was just something that people were not uh, ultimately really aware of. And I do think more and more people are waking up to this and understand this, and that it isn't a bipartisan issue, and that that there is anyway. So we'll get into that more another time. But I did that in terms of that waking up process is a part of that identity shift. And
Mhm.
full moons can be illuminating. And I think that this isn't an eclipse, but that Uranus energy energizing it. Like Uranus is electric, and I'm going to wrap up soon, and we're going to talk about some lore um, with Uranus and Prometheus and what adds to that electric part of it. But Uranus is electric. It's exciting, it's disruptive, it has this punch to it, right? And so
Right. Right. Yeah.
I think that because it's a Uranus return for the US and because we have it on this pivotal axis, like this is in angular houses, this is lighting up the angular houses for the US, which is the first, the seventh, the 10th, and the fourth houses. This is I think this is going to feel maybe not like an eclipse, but again, because of the Mars Pluto square leading up to it, because of the Venus
Yep.
um, Saturn square leading up to it, which is charged with
And
Cancer.
Uranus is sextiling Neptune. It's
Yes,
trining Pluto.
fiery.
Like,
Yes,
yeah.
they're all
Like,
speaking to each other.
yeah.
We're all speaking
Yeah.
to each other, and
Yeah.
this is to me not a normal full moon, specifically for the
Mm-mm.
US. And oh, but before we wrap up this, I didn't really get into it, but it's we kind of talked about it, but like Netanyahu, I do kind of want to briefly talk about because it's the first and seventh house. You, I kind of want to talk about how this could be seen as a story about the US and Israel and more people waking up to the true I think this is information that people have actively tried to repress for a very long time, and this is connected to, AIPAC and people just having like you sent me that video, people in Congress, "Oh, I've got an AIPAC guy." Everybody's got an AIPAC
Yeah.
guy. Doesn't matter
Yep.
if you're which side of the aisle you're on, and so
Oh, I
the
have to run that. Let me run that by my APAC guy to make sure it's okay with like
Mm,
that's
right, right.
there's a lot wrong with the world, but I mean that's certainly
It's
it's a
huge,
piece
right?
of it. Yeah.
And so and this is a big story, and so interestingly enough too, one of the other Mars Pluto squares corresponds with October 23, I believe, which which kicked off a lot of what's been happening with Israel and Palestine as well. So I do believe that these mounting tensions in this conversation between US and Israel to me is tied to the first and seventh house. And I find it really interesting that, Trump is a Gemini dominant, and Netanyahu is Sagittarius stellium. And so it's interesting that like Trump is, we almost have this like mutual reception happening between leaders sort of representing these these houses. And so I
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say too, like you said, like obviously not like all Sagittarius, but if you're looking at it from a world perspective of countries, it does speak of, the shadow side of it of colonialism, imperialism, because it's expanding. This is what I believe, and I'm going to put it everywhere because I'm scared of other stuff existing.
It's hubris. It's hubris. It's the
Yeah.
blind arrogance
Yep.
and that like it's the shadow side of Jupiterian expansionism is hubris. It's just that arrogance on such a toxic, violent level. Um, and I think that hubris is ultimately going to be the nail in the coffin, right? And I think even
Always is.
of course. And I think that's interestingly enough, I think that hubris has been to me a major part of the Iranian, this of the illegal war in Iran and the attacks on Iran. I believe it's just sort of been very arrogant and very expansionist. And anyway,
I mean, too, with that, like the the Iranian Guard, like their like militia, they've been preparing for something like this, right? The way that they run that
of
country, like
course.
they can stay shut down. They can weather this better than like the very like isolationist United States and the people that like there are obviously groups within the United States that have had to learn to cultivate, mutual aid networks and community, right? For their survival. Because what has the United States ever done for them, right? But Iran, it's just a completely different vibe, and this is like very much like it's a spiritual thing for them just as much as it is about oil. And I know like obviously the United States and there's that whole military thing of like this is a holy war. Um, it's not genuinely that for the United States though. That's rhetoric, it's propaganda. Um, but with
Yes and
the
no. I mean, I think it is
well, yeah, I
propaganda,
mean,
but I do
I
believe there
think
are
there is
people
something
that really
deeper.
believe that. I do, and I think that
Sure.
really is net as somebody who who was raised in, like, full-on Christian Texas upbringing, with I mean, to me, there are people that it's like it's like the Civil War never ended, and it's like the Crusades never ended. And I do believe there's something weird, and there's that lore, and that again, that like eighth house Cancer stellium, like nostalgia for the past, even when it's
Mhm.
deeply twisted and violent and fucked up. And so I don't know. I just have to say, like, and obviously, this holy war is like, by the way, we've said it and everybody knows it, but classic Neptune and Aries. Um, and so, yeah. Anyway, um, I do think, it's like a tale of two cities, like a tale of two countries. I do feel like this first seventh house thing is very United States and Israel. I just see I see there being a shift. I think this full moon and the tensions leading up to it could be a shift in the way that the public views our alliance with Israel.
Yeah, I think with that trine with Saturn and Aries during it too, there is because you have the people and then you have those Saturnian themes, right? And it is kind of like looking at like, are these structures working?
Mm.
Like it is the foundation that, Israel was built on. Is that authentic? Like, or, should there be APAC money in politicians, right? Like, I
And
think that's something
that's
that
that, like, Venus-Saturn square for sure, right? Like,
yeah, yep,
reevaluating the structures, reevaluating our values, and what are we spending our money on. This is very, like, in that tension, this is, like, what we're looking at, and we talked about it in the forecast, but you might experience that in a personal way, in what you might personally,
sure,
during this time. So
boundaries are sacred, but you have to communicate them.
you have to communicate them, and also I was talking about this on poetry late night threads last night. I shout out threads like every episode. I can't help it. I'm a threads addict. But oh, for those that want to get a daily dose of poetry, come hang out with me late nights on threads. I post up poetry every night.
I
But
sleep. Um, sorry, I'm boring.
I sleep too. Okay, I do. I do. One of my fellow poets said something really interesting to me last night. Uh, I was talking about how I've been working on softening up and being more vulnerable in recent years. I was kind of a hard ass and kind of like a independent broy chick for a very long time, and I've been working on being softer and more vulnerable in recent years. And I was talking about this. We're going back and forth and speaking in poems. We duet in poems. And she said this really great thing that I think is relevant to the Venus Saturn square, by the way. She said, yes, stay soft and be vulnerable, but keep those boundaries and maintain those boundaries. And then I
Oh,
said,
yeah,
of course. But then I said, yeah, it's almost like the more that you're able to keep those boundaries and maintain those boundaries, the more safe you feel to actually be soft and vulnerable when the time comes. And that entire exchange to me just is so like Venus square Saturn.
yeah. Oh,
Venus in Cancer.
yeah. It is, yeah. Because I think, like, there's almost this it's so performative, and we're in survival mode for a lot of reasons, but, like, when even the friends you're around, you don't feel safe communicating your feelings or boundaries, like, you're not going to feel soft.
Yeah.
Like, how could you? Because you're gonna feel, like, pressure to perform or just not seen, and yeah. So
And doesn't
boundaries are
it
very sacred.
They are, and isn't it like such a and don't doesn't it soften you when you express a boundary and someone says, "I respect it," like, and
And
someone
it actually gets seen? Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, I can be safe," like,
I
it's
mean,
great.
I'm still at a point in my life where it's kind of like a smack in the face because I'm expecting the opposite, and I'm like, "Oh,"
Yeah,
and I'm getting ready to, like, stand my ground, and I'm like and they're like, "Yeah, no, cool, I respect that." I'm like, "Oh,
great.
thank you." Cool. Good talk.
I know. Oh, we're in our healing era, yes.
Yeah.
Um, let's get a little snappies on for everybody out there listening who's also in their
I
healing
I
era.
can't snap, but
You can't
I can
snap?
do emotion. No, don't
This is fascinating. I can't really whistle.
it's
I
not.
can't whistle.
It's
Can you whistle?
I can't whistle either. No.
I can sorta whistle, but it's like I have to, I can, suck in and whistle, but I can't. No, I can't do it. You know those people that can, really whistle? I'm so impressed. Okay,
It's
anyway.
like I figured this out, and this is so random, but we're talking about whistling now. I figured out as a kid I couldn't whistle because the beaver from Winnie the Pooh has that whistle in how he talks, and I would try to emulate voices, and I could not do that one because
Aw.
I can't whistle, and there's that, like yeah. Anyways, um,
So, we're gonna need our baddies to back us up with some whistling at some point because we
yes.
are whistle deficient over here. Um
You know who was not whistle deficient? Prometheus, probably.
I was gonna say, and I feel like this is a great transition for some reason
Yeah. Yeah.
to talk about Prometheus.
No, and I like this because it lines up with the Uranus and Gemini stuff too. How we've talked about like even like just some Jupiter is like it expands, but there can be the how it expands is not necessarily good. And Uranus is almost the opposite. Like in Saturn too, but so we'll save Saturn for another time. Saturn gets a lot of shit. And like I get it. There's some tough transits with Saturn, but like as someone that has gone through it, I'm in such a better place now. Um,
Yes,
like
we're here.
and and
Same.
and you just have to be receptive and adaptable. And I know that's like some we go through stubborn periods of our lives, and that's growth.
Yeah.
But yeah, Uranus, like obviously, I feel, but there's this disruptor side of it. It disrupts, it rebels, and it's this great. Uh, the myth of Prometheus is a great example of something holding multitudes, more than one truth, depending on your perspective. To the gods, to Zeus, he was disruptive, but to the humans that he loved and molded out of clay, he was their liberator. It's the same
Mhm.
action. One group calls it disruptive, another calls it liberation. And with Uranus and Gemini, I feel like this gets amplified. Like Dr. Manhattan level energy for Watchmen fans out there. Um, because this already kind of disruptive, quote unquote, wrecking ball is mainlining caffeine and holding 1,000 truths in one space right now, with it being in Gemini. Um, it's like a lightning bolt into a circuit board almost. And there is a lot we are parsing through in real time, and but I think Disruptor isn't the full story. You could argue that with its time in Taurus leading up to now, that it was showing us how we are misaligned with our material values, which is important to get to a new place of collectivism. And now he's jacked into the human nervous system like Angelina Jolie and Hackers, just feverishly updating the system, right? And like as somebody who is sensitive to Gemini placements, because I'm a little more slow and steady, there is a jolt in the air, and I think like more so than I've ever noticed before, and in that, especially like once Mercury conjoined Uranus, and it kind of like came to that house party at his own house, right? Like it really like it can be felt, and it's just it is definitely being felt on a collective level. Like, you know what I mean? Like of the significance of this disruptor slash liberator and what they are doing since they have left Taurus. And of course, like we talk about shadow sides and the Sagittarius energy. If you have people like colonialists that want to expand, is not good. If you have people like Elon Musk that want to use, this type of energy to, advance technology, it may not be good. Like the energy is out there, and it's for, all of us to use. Um, and several tech-minded edgelords have used Prometheus as a reference for what they do. In fact, like the nerd references for some, like Palantir pisses me off to no end, because it's like, did you even read Lord of the Rings? Like, do you even understand what you'd like? It irritates me. But that's another thing. There
The
one in
Virgo
particular stands.
stellium is ruffled.
Yeah, one in particular, Mark Andreessen, who's the co-founder of Netscape. And he's written some stuff. He's very pro AI. He wrote a manifesto called the Techno Optimist Manifesto, and other such brilliant garbage like why AI will save the world. It won't. Um, and he's referenced Prometheus several times. Quote, the myth of Prometheus in various updated forms like Frankenstein, Oppenheimer, and Terminator haunts our nightmares. He's elaborated on this on several podcasts, that although fire has many benefits, he feels the Prometheus myth focuses it as a weapon. Um, The fear that technology or quote, "The fear that technology of our own creation will rise up and destroy us is deeply coded into our culture." The Greeks expressed this fear in the Prometheus myth. Prometheus brought the destructive power of fire and more generally technology, techne, to man, for which Prometheus was condemned to perpetual torture by the gods. And this is where these folks just they don't get it, and they're just
Well, it's
wrong.
interesting. Okay. Well, can I interject one quick thing? One thought?
Okay,
Okay. I
maybe.
don't agree with these individuals full stop, but I will be devil's advocate. I'll be a Gemini and just say that I I do find it interesting, just as objective as we can be, to look at Prometheus lore and the mythology of that and the history of human fear at technological innovation and technological revolutions in general. I just find that to be very fascinating. And like I personally I've always talked about that fear of technology and I've always recognized that. Um, and I personally didn't totally connect it to, Prometheus mythology, so I like it. I
Yeah,
dig
no, and that part of it, sure, I get that, but, like, the misalignment is that they're looking at Prometheus as being a destructive force that gave destruction, gave a weapon to man, and if you look at the myth, maybe that's what man has done with it, yes, but that was not Prometheus's purpose
intention.
of
Yes.
doing that, right?
Right.
Um
Okay.
So, blame the game, not the player. I don't know if that really applies, but
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah, it's yeah, no, but that's a good
anyway,
yeah.
because Prometheus is punished for loving mankind. There's several, like, poems and writings of about Prometheus where he goes on like, talks about, like, how much he gave man this and that because of how much he loves them. He stole fire to thwart Zeus's plans to eliminate humanity and create a new subordinate species. Prometheus had made them out of clay. Zeus didn't like that, like, that they didn't just blindly obey. Um Relevant much? And he is a benefactor who sacrifices himself for our good, and his punishment is an indicator not of the dangers of fire, um, but more so of the tyranny of Zeus,
Mm,
and that it's an inconvenient distinction for technocrats and billionaires, um, of what is disruptive versus what is liberating. Prometheus was cunning and wise. His name means foresight. So he knows what he is doing and what the consequences will be as he is doing it. Um, and it's a sacrifice for mankind that is not too far off from in Christian myth the Jesus Christ and his sacrifice for mankind, dying for our sins, et cetera, et cetera. Um, And eventually his tortures end when another suffering immortal makes a deal with Zeus. Chiron, the wounded healer, trades his immortality in exchange for the freedom of Prometheus. And the Greeks honored Prometheus. They celebrated Techne. They appreciated the gifts, of civilization. And it's not a cautionary tale. It is a reminder that creativity, technology raises human beings above, um, you know, uh, those subservient forms that Zeus just wanted us to be reduced to, and it is a myth founded in a lot of gratitude, and yes, there can be a lot to said about what technology is being used for, but I think that is man has free will, right? So like that was one of those things that even Prometheus like wanted to make sure happened. So he gave us that spark, and what we did with it, we have to own. And we've done some terrible things with it. But
and that's
we've
something
done some great things with it too.
yeah. Yeah, it's something that we're gonna talk about on future episodes, just just really quickly, to whet your appetites for the future. Just yes, there's ways that we've used technology to save lives, but there is also that dark history of every time we have technological advances that seems to correspond with different major wars in human history and how, oh, more technology, new technology, it's new ways to kill humans, and so we're gonna at some point
Right.
we're gonna dig into how the history of technological revolutions overlaps with the history of certain wars and how that corresponds with astrological transits, which is gonna be very interesting.
Well, like out of World War II during that time period, you had radar and computer technology. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, then you
I
had
wanna
the
geek
US
I wanna
build
geek out
nukes,
I
but,
wanna geek
like,
out
I
over
mean,
Alan Turing at some point, the father of
yeah,
computers, and talk about, like, queer history. And the code breakers and Bletchley Circle and all of that, so
uh-huh,
or 2.
yeah,
Yeah. So we're gonna just some, like, little things to whet your appetites for future stuff, for our fellow history nerds out there. I know that there's this beautiful, delicious overlap of, astrologers and historians and history lovers.
I'm one of them.
Me too. Um Yeah, but that's gives us a lot to think about with Prometheus. And you know what else I want to say really quickly in response to that? It's like about the perspective um of Prometheus in relation to Zeus or Jupiter. Is it's kind of also related to the way that we see um the way we've been programmed to see certain people from certain countries, like one nation's
Yeah,
hero is another nation's freedom fighter, and
yep,
I sort of see that, as crossover with the Prometheus lore.
yeah. I mean, and again, like, spoilers for other episodes, but you saw that leading up to the Civil War. Um,
Mhm.
the abolitionists that were the ones that were really willing to lay their lives on the line, because the Congress and, Senate doing fuck all, no one's surprise. Um,
So, yeah, so is there does that kind of conclude the Prometheus
yeah,
stuff?
yeah, I think I just thought, the actual lore of Prometheus and why we apply that to Uranus, during these trying times, I like to look at it as a liberating force, and even for the people that want that liberation or don't even know that they need to be liberated necessarily, but need it, right? And I think maybe that group even more especially, but like, even just like reducing it down to a jailbreak, there will be disruptive things that happen. There will be inconveniences that happen in order to make that happen to liberate the people, which is ultimately a morally good thing, right? Like,
Yeah, and that's that really interesting overlay with Prometheus and Plutonian stuff, right? And, like,
yeah,
Uranus and Gemini talking to Pluto and Aquarius, and power to the people.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But hey, Audrey,
Yes.
what are you listening to?
Hmm. It's funny you should ask. Well, to match this electric, truth seeking Sagittarius lunation, I want to keep the vibes appropriately weird. This week's
Mm,
deep cut takes us back to the mid 90s, left field underground with Moloko's Fun for Me. I'm a big fan of 90s trip hop electronic
mhm.
music. It's a trip hop ecstasy. It's a little bit sinister. It's completely hypnotic, surreal, and it channels that erratic experimental Uranian electricity perfectly. If you're
Yes, it
looking
does.
for if you're looking for a soundtrack to help you reevaluate your life with a renewed sense of adventure, this is the one. Moloko, Fun for Me. Hey, Peony, what are you
What?
listening? Yeah, you.
Me?
Yeah, what are you
Um,
listening to?
um, right now, I've been on a last dinner party kick. They put out a new song, Big Dog, that gives, like, really, like, Mars and Taurus vibes. Um, I my opinion, but I feel that they really are honestly one of the most important rock bands of the last decade. Um, they are immensely talented. If you've only heard, like, their single, you don't hear it, but, like, the orchestral, like, opening on their first album and, like, what it goes into this very, like it's not like rock opera, but it's very baroque, in a lot of and it has this, like, Queen feel to it. And there's this beauty to it, with the power. And I really think they're like I said, they're immensely talented and on the level of like Rush, Queen, Zeppelin, etc. Abigail Morris, the singer, is a Libra, Venusian ruled like Taurus, and you see that like because I made that joke on Threads about like um, specifically my Libra Pluto conjunction, but like it's like bring the guillotine but make it cute. That's Abigail Morris, and that's very much Last Dinner Party. And I think about that French vibe and their aesthetic and even the lyrics. They're revolutionary. They're very viva la proletariat. So this reminds me also of Pluto and Aquarius, because that's where it was during the French Revolution, and this and they bring that their lyrics, especially this new song, Big Dog, really bring the guillotine. I mean, it's there's a power. Her voice is oh my God, her voice is so powerful, but they're really just absolutely, absolutely talented musicians.
Awesome. I can't wait to check it out. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. We love it here and we love that you're tuning in, and we can't wait to break down more deep cuts with you next time.
Oh, Pebblebrook Village is Audrey, Patricia Sybeck, and myself, Peony. Check out the other podcasts on Pebblebrook Village, Trash Fire Tarot, weekly and monthly tarot forecast airing every Monday. Monthly ones are on the first of the month. Thank you for listening. And until next time, we will see you in the stars.